In 1919, a Spanish engineer watched his friend die in an aircraft crash. The cause was devastatingly simple. The plane stalled, the wings stopped generating lift, and gravity did the rest. Juan de la Cierva stood at that wreckage and made a vow that would consume the rest of his life. He would build an aircraft that could not stall, an aircraft that could not spin, an aircraft that even if its engine failed completely would float gently to the ground like a leaf falling from a tree. 4 years later, he succeeded. His invention predates the helicopter. It inspired military development across 4 continents. It landed on the White House lawn in 1931 and won the prestigious Collier Trophy. Amelia Earhart set altitude records in one. But here's what makes absolutely no sense. Despite being the only aircraft in history specifically designed so engine failure cannot kill you, despite a built-in parachute that requires no activation, despite being simpler, cheaper, and safer than helicopters, this aircraft has been a commercial catastrophe for over a century. Only about 4,000 pilots fly them in America today. 3 attempts at mass production have all failed. The reason why reveals everything wrong with how we think about aviation safety. The year was 1919. Juan de la Cierva had designed a 3-engined bomber for the Spanish military, an aircraft he believed would secure his legacy as an aviation pioneer. During an early test flight, the pilot pulled back on the controls. The aircraft stalled. The wings, which moments before had generated the lift keeping 2 tons of metal suspended in the sky, suddenly became useless slabs of fabric and wood. The bomber plunged to earth. The pilot died on impact. Cierva was utterly devastated, but more than grief, he felt consumed by a single obsessive question. Why did airplanes have to stall at all? Here's what most people don't understand about fixed-wing flight. An airplane's wing generates lift only when air flows over it at sufficient speed and the correct angle. Fly too slowly or pitch the nose too high, and airflow separates from the wing surface. Lift vanishes instantly and completely. This is the stall that has killed countless pilots since the Wright brothers first took flight. Cierva refused to accept this as inevitable. He began experimenting with rotating wings, not powered rotors like a helicopter, something radically different. A rotor that would spin freely, driven only by the wind passing through it as the aircraft moved forward. He called this phenomenon auto-rotation. Think about the implications for a moment. If the rotor spins because of forward motion through air, it will keep spinning as long as the aircraft is moving in any direction. Even falling is movement. Even a dead engine means air still rushing upward through the rotor blades. On January 17, 1923, at Cuatro Vientos Airport in Madrid, Cierva's C-4 prototype lifted off the ground and flew 200 yards. It was the world's first successful rotorcraft flight. The helicopter wouldn't achieve practical flight for nearly 2 more decades. But here's what made this aircraft truly revolutionary. It couldn't stall. The spinning rotor generates lift regardless of the aircraft's airspeed or angle of attack. Fly too slowly, and the gyroplane simply descends gently. It doesn't drop like a stone. It doesn't spin violently. The rotor becomes a parachute that requires no activation, no pilot input, no split-second decisions. Stall and spin accidents account for the majority of general aviation fatalities even today. Cierva had engineered them completely out of existence. By the early 1930s, his extraordinary invention seemed absolutely destined to transform the future of aviation itself. On April 22, 1931, pilot James Ray descended from the sky and landed an autogyro directly on the White House lawn. President Herbert Hoover watched from the south portico as this strange aircraft touched down on grass where no plane had ever landed before. Hoover personally presented the Collier Trophy, aviation's highest honor, calling the autogyro one of the outstanding improvements in heavier-than-air flight. The momentum seemed unstoppable. Amelia Earhart set an altitude record of 18,415 feet in a Pitcairn autogyro. Approximately 500 autogyros were built and sold across France, Germany, Japan, and the United States. Manufacturers produced colorful brochures depicting takeoffs from suburban lawns and rotor blades folding for garage storage. The future appeared to belong to Cierva's revolutionary invention. But then everything changed. The military wanted something the autogyro couldn't provide: hover capability, the ability to remain motionless in the air, to insert troops behind enemy lines, to rescue downed pilots from impossible terrain. Autogyros could land almost anywhere, but they couldn't hang suspended like a hummingbird. Helicopters could. In 1936, Juan de la Cierva boarded a conventional airliner at Croydon Airport in London. Dense fog had delayed departure. When the plane finally took off, it drifted slightly off course and exploded into a house on rising terrain south of the runway. Cierva died instantly at age 41. The bitter irony is inescapable. The man who dedicated his life to preventing stall-related crashes died in exactly the kind of accident his invention would have survived. 2 years later, Congress passed legislation specifically intended to rescue the struggling autogyro industry. Here's the twist that sealed its fate. The military redirected those funds toward helicopter development instead. By 1942, Igor Sikorsky was mass-producing helicopters for the war effort. The autogyro was abandoned. But surely the commercial market would recognize the autogyro's extraordinary safety advantages. 3 manufacturers tried to find out: the Umbor U-18 in 1965, the Avian 2/180 gyroplane in 1967, the McCulloch J-2 in 1972. All 3 received full FAA certification for commercial production. All 3 were catastrophic commercial failures. No gyroplane has achieved mass market success in over a century of existence. Today, the entire United States has roughly 4,000 gyroplane pilots. The helicopter that Cierva himself called too dangerous to develop became ubiquitous, while his safer alternative faded into obscurity. The question is why? The answer reveals something deeply uncomfortable about human nature. It has almost nothing to do with engineering. In the 1960s, Igor Benzon began mass-marketing simple gyroplane kits to amateur builders. His sales pitch was seductive, affordable, easy to fly, cannot stall or spin. Thousands of enthusiasts bought in. But Benzon's designs contained a fatal flaw. The offset between the center of gravity and thrust line created a phenomenon called power pushover. Apply too much throttle at the wrong moment, and the aircraft would pitch forward violently, unloading the rotor and sending the machine tumbling to earth. Untrained pilots in poorly designed home-built kits crashed and died. The gyroplane's reputation was destroyed not by its fundamental principles, but by bad engineering and worse training. Yet the stigma stuck. Flying windmills, freaks, death traps. Here's what makes this truly frustrating. Modern gyroplanes have solved these problems entirely. Germany's autogyro has delivered over 3,000 100 aircraft worldwide with an impeccable safety record. Their Calidus model holds FAA primary category certification. These machines are stable, refined, and extraordinarily safe. Yet compare those numbers to the Cirrus SR22. Over 7,000 delivered, nearly 50% of the entire piston aircraft market. The SR22's selling point: a whole airplane parachute system that has saved over 250 lives. Buyers pay premium prices for an emergency backup they hope never to use. Think about this paradox carefully. The Cirrus parachute requires the pilot to recognize an emergency, make a decision, and physically pull a handle. The gyroplane's auto-rotating rotor requires nothing. It activates automatically, instantly, every single time. No decision, no delay, no possibility of human error. One became the best-selling general aviation aircraft of the century. The other remains a curiosity with 4,000 American pilots. The psychological explanation is painfully simple. We don't actually want passive safety. We want to feel in control. Two engines feel safer than one, even though asymmetric thrust after engine failure kills pilots who aren't properly trained. Complexity feels reassuring, even when simplicity is statistically superior. We trust machines that demand our skill over machines that protect us from our limitations. Regulatory barriers compound the problem. Gyroplanes missed inclusion in the light sport aircraft category. They cannot be sold commercially or used for paid passenger flights in the United States. The certification path remains tortuous and expensive. Juan de la Cierva gave aviation something extraordinary. He engineered a solution to the deadliest problem in flight: the stall that turns wings into dead weight, the spin that turns cockpits into coffins. His autogyro cannot experience either. When its engine fails, it doesn't fall. It floats. Yet for 100 years, we've chosen complexity over simplicity. We've trusted the helicopter that demands constant vigilance over the gyroplane that forgives every mistake. We've bought aircraft with parachutes we have to remember to pull, while ignoring the one with a parachute that pulls itself. The gyroplane's failure isn't a failure of engineering. It's a mirror reflecting something uncomfortable about human nature. We don't actually want to be saved passively. We want to feel like we're in control, even when that feeling is an illusion. We trust machines that require skill over machines that protect us from our lack of it. Perhaps the next generation will rediscover what Cierva knew a century ago. Or perhaps the safest aircraft ever built will remain aviation's greatest missed opportunity. Either way, one truth endures. The only plane that can't kill you on engine failure is still waiting for the world to believe it. Subscribe to discover what other aviation innovations we've inexplicably ignored.